This week on Two Legs.
It's McCartney Books featuring special guest
Joe Wisby from At Books Beatles.
Stay tuned. Hi, McCartney fans, and welcome to, this is episode 98 of Two Legs, a Paul McCartney podcast. We are a Paul McCartney talk show mainly dealing with the solo careers of the one and only Paul McCartney. I'm one of your two co-hosts, Tom Hanyadi. You may know me from my other show, Talk More Talk. And I am here with my partner in crime, my buddy, my backwards traveler. He is Andy Nichols. Andy, what is going on, my friend? Good to see you.
Good to see you, Tom. Swamped in Macca books, getting ready for a good talk.
Books. Yes, absolutely. Today's episode is about McCartney books, and it's more books about that the people have written about McCartney. We won't really necessarily get into his children's books or his painting books or Blackbird singing or anything like this. We're going to just talk about the books that other authors have written about McCartney, and we have a special guest for that, and you may know him from his Instagram page, Books Beatles, and this is Joe Wisby. Joe, what's going on?
Hello, Tom. Hello, Andy. Thank you so much for having me. I'm going good, thank you, in quite a grey English afternoon, Sunday afternoon over here.
Well, it should be just a regular day then over there, right? Because it's grey a lot.
Too true, my friend.
There's pockets of sunshine every now and then.
Right.
It's not all rain clouds, pun intended.
Right. Yeah, but anyways, like I said, we're going to talk about some McCartney books. Joe is an amazing Beatles and solo Beatles books collector, and we're really looking forward to talking to him today about these McCartney books. But a couple things real quick that I want to remind everybody of. We are now on, that is Two Legs. We are now on Fab4 Radio, so you can check us out there. And I believe we're going to be on the weekends I think it's 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. We're going to be on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays for the time being. And that should be fun. Our last show just showed up this weekend, what's the date today? The 30th. So it just started the Friday the 28th. So we are now on Fab4 Radio, so you can check us out there. Andy, what are we else on? We're on Spotify now, right?
We're now on Spotify and Pandora and Amazon Radio.
Excellent. Thank you very much for all your work there. And also coming up in the month of September, which is when this episode's going to take place, we are going to be doing a crossover with the guys at Things We Said Today. That's Ken Michaels, that's Darren DeVivo. As we all know, our buddy Alan Cozen is working on a book called McCartney Legacy with Adrian Sinclair that we're really looking forward to coming out next year. I'm sure, Joe, you probably, looking forward to that one as well. It's going to be, it looks like it's going to be a Lennonology style type of book, day by day, all the, the news of that time. So I believe the first issue will take place from 67 with Family Way. When we talked with Alan last, they still were up in the air when it was going to start, whether it was,
but I think that was pretty much the decided, agreed upon time, right. Family Way, 67.
Right. And then go to the end of 73. So that's going to be a nice big book.
Long overdue.
Yeah, long overdue, right.
We know what John Lennon ate for breakfast, on October 2nd, 1971. We don't know what Macca did. So now Macca will have his share.
Exactly. And like you said, long overdue, very well deserved, and really looking forward to it. So, but we're going to be doing this Things We Said Today crossover. Will be on an episode of theirs, and they'll be on an episode of ours in September. So looking forward to that. As a lot of people have heard in the past, things we said today was one of my inspirations for getting this show started. So it's going to be one of those pinch me, I might be dreaming moments, So I'm really looking forward to that. So stay tuned for that. So Joe, getting back to you, my friend, let's talk about this Instagram page that you started up, Books Beatles. Tell us, the beginnings and why did you do it?
Well, it was the height of lockdown, so kind of end of April, start of May, and I realised that I had 400 odd plus Beatles books. I think it's about that. I used to keep a little spreadsheet, but that I gave up after a while. And I noticed that on Instagram, people have long running accounts of vinyl records, CDs, cassettes, books, anything that people collect, key rings, anything that people collect. So I thought, well, let's put out some of these Beatles books. Let's share my little library with fellow Beatle people, which I started to do. And then people started to follow a lot. Some of the publishers started to get in touch with me about promoting books, etc. And it's great. People will message me and ask me about, do I recommend a particular book? I have a little Saturday classic where each Saturday I post a very famous book in the Beatles canon, and I will discuss that with people, which is great fun. You get some great different opinions about what's a good book, what's a bad book. So yeah, it started small and it's growing a little bit, which is good, which is cool.
Gotcha. Cool.
Nice way to see people kind of becoming productive during the height of the lockdown and kind of come up with these new creative things. And honestly, Two Legs has been churning along because pumping out so many episodes because of that too. Because we've all been in the same situation, so we're kind of all hitting our niche areas of what we like to push. And your Beatle book account's great. It's a great page.
Thank you.
I've seen lots of books on there that I have not seen before. Some I have. So any information that we can gain and learn from it and share is great. So thank you.
Absolutely. So let's go get in a time machine and talk about starting to collect Beatles books. I mean, so obviously you're a fan of their music.
Yes. So
and then books just was the next thing.
Well, I always, as a kid, I loved reading. I was a big reader. I'm an only child, so maybe it was to just kind of take my mind off of out of boredom. This was, I'm 36, so this was still kind of pre-internet and pre a lot of things really. So I love books, and then I fell for the Beatles when I was about 8 when I saw Help for the first time. And I I naturally kind of went into bookshops with this passion for Beatles and for solo, as I would go on to discover. So I just realized that every book that I got from the age of about 10, 11, 12, I loved all of them. I loved that they would take me on a little journey. I would find out something new. I would see a great new set of pictures. The 90s was when a lot of stuff started to be more available. So that was how I felt, really.
Really? Cool. Very cool.
Good story. And I've always found very interesting about the books, the content, like the narrative is a lot of the same. We know the narrative in the Beatles' tale is the narrative. But what I've found is in reading these books, and I wonder if you agree, is that when you're reading these books, you're actually learning about the author and their journey more so than the story of because the Beatles story is routine. We all can tell it. And so is Macca's. But reading these books, it's interesting to see what you glean from the author and the author's perspective on where they're at as a fan or as a writer.
Yeah, it's fascinating when you look at, there are lots of famous examples that you guys, and I'm sure all your listeners will know, where you've got a book like Shout by Philip Norman, which is completely about one person's view of the story, a view that in this case completely writes out Paul from the story, as we know. So that's a great example of that. And then you see books like Ray Coleman's book on John, which is a very positive book on John. You see a lot of books about John written about 1980. So the John Green book, Dakota Days, which shows John in a negative way. And then, of course, above all of it, you've got the Albert Goldman book on John, which is is definitely worth a podcast on its own, probably one day. But yeah, and then you've got books like all the insiders' books. So Tony Bramwell's book, Tony Barrow's
Yeah.
book, Patty's book. There's so many different aspects of this. That's why I love the books. Really, there's all these different aspects of this one story that all these different people can get their take on and their view on, and then together you can kind of make up your own mind, I suppose.
You can. I mean,
Yeah.
my personal opinion is, and I'm sure I wonder what your thoughts on this are. A lot of my favorite books, McCartney, Lennon, Beatles, are all the ones kind of that were published before Lennon was killed, because they are written so differently than after. So most of the ones I have that I'm going to talk about are the McCartney ones are all before that. I mean, there's been great books obviously since then, but anything written before 1980 is special, in my view.
It's a whole different. It's almost like it's a massively different perspective, because I think Shout is a good example, though, where a lot of Shout was written before John was killed, but then of course when it was published the following year, Philip Norman really made sure that narrative was changed to push Paul out of the picture quite considerably. But yeah, some of those mid-70s books, are The Longest Cocktail Party is another good,
Lilo, sure,
which is a fantastic book, which was written originally, obviously, in 1972. That really captures the energy that Apple had, which I think you would never have got had it been published in 1992.
Apple to the Core, another good one.
Right.
A fantastic book, fantastic book.
So, so these past decades or whatever that's you've been, collecting books, what have been some of the standout ones for you?
Beatles or Paul or both or
both. Yeah,
both.
Well, actually, let's just stick with Beatles because we'll get to Paul in a second.
Yeah, cool. Well, the real kind of entry book for me that really blew my mind was Revolution in the Head, Ian MacDonald, which was a book that was way so different from a lot of the previous Beatle literature that had come before it. It took me anyway, really into the recording studio for some of those descriptions. I love the opinions that he expressed, where he would dismiss songs, even if I didn't agree with it. He would dismiss Across the Universe. He would dismiss a lot. Helter Skelter is not really a fan of Helter Skelter, Ian MacDonald. I think, but that was really refreshing, because through the 80s you had quite a lot of sycophantic books that had come out about John, but also about the Beatles, because John was obviously painted to be this kind of saint after he was killed. But Revolution in the Head, not only is it really interesting in a way that it looks at the Beatles music, but it kind of changed the game a lot for Beatle literature. I'm sure you guys are a fan of that book as well.
Can't say that I've seen it yet.
No. Oh, have you not? Oh, okay.
No.
Okay.
No.
Yeah.
But now I've heard you talk about it before, and I'll definitely.
It's a fantastic book. I think it was published in '94 initially.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
And it's a fantastic book. You should pick it up. It's probably the gold standard in terms of academic Beatles texts. One of them, it's up there anyway, and it's been revised, I think, a few times too. I think.
A few times. I think after Anthology, it got revised.
Right, and then I think he passed away shortly after that.
He took his own life, Ian MacDonald, in I think maybe early 2000s, mid 2000s. So a while after the book was, but he was obviously a very troubled individual. But an amazing book, and his work will go on, obviously.
Right. It will. Tom, if you remember, like kind of like Ted's book, it's very it goes through every song. Each song has about a paragraph dedicated to it. He talks about it. He gives his very candid opinion on it and moves on. He covers the whole gamut, and it's really good.
Cool, yeah. I mean, I like that kind of thing. Just give me what you think about it, and I might not agree with you, but at least you got the balls enough to
Revolution in the Head.
Talk about your feelings for the show. Well, how do you feel about this big wave of this last decade? Pretty much since 2010, there's just been massive wave with all these books coming out recently, and it's just like one after another. I mean, there's some highlights for me. I love the Jim Birkenstand book. I love the A's for Apple series. I don't know if you've seen those or not, but those are just like massive, humongous books that are just got so much detail in them. Was it the Elephant and the Walrus, or was it the Walrus and the Elephant? That's a really, really good book as well. So, I mean, just massive amount of books coming out this last decade.
I think what you're seeing,
so many.
I think what you're seeing, which is really cool, is now to write a really good John, Paul, or Beatle book, you've got to be specific. You've got to find an area, partly because of the work that Mark Lewison's doing to cover the Beatles story.
Right.
There's no point in writing a Beatles biography because there's no way that it will compete with what the work that Mark does.
Yeah.
So what I think you'll get going forward is a bit like the Beatles and Drugs book, which I know, Tom, you spoke about on another podcast, where you find a book, you find a subject, and then you write just about that subject and how it relates to Paul, to John, to obviously the Beatles as a whole. So I think in these last 10 years, you've seen loads of books that will come out like that, which I think is great. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so much area to cover, and we're still learning, mass amounts of information from these four lads. It really is crazy, and the work that Jim put in for the Beatles that vanished was amazing. And then you also got the Brian Epstein graphic novel that would end up being, I thought, was pretty good as well.
Spencer Lee's books are also a great to read. Also, have you read a lot of Spencer Lee's stuff, Joe?
Yeah, Drummed Out is a really good book about Pete. Spencer Lee's written a lot of books, isn't it? I've not read all of them, I have to say.
Right.
No, I haven't either, because he's very prolific. But I got to meet him a few times in Liverpool. Nice guy. Nice guy.
I would also recommend. I don't know if you guys know the book by Pete Doggett.
Money.
Yes.
Brilliant. I will recommend that to the day I die.
That's essential reading, I think, for anybody. Really. Yeah. That's on a Lewison level.
It's like jaw dropping. Some of that stuff is just amazing. Was it Capital giving Paul extra?
The McCartney clause.
To bring him back, and then we found out later that's pretty much why he didn't attend the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, because of that
very infamous meeting at the Dorchester Hotel in '83. So I actually thought to have that book. I bought 5 copies of it for my friends and said, "Who are Beatle fans? I said, you must read this book."
Yeah, good stuff. I mean, I'm looking over to my left here and just looking at so many different things that have just come out over the since 2010, really. I had 3, when I discovered Things We Said Today in 2012, I had 3 Beatle books, 3. I had Imagine John Lennon from '88, because I just went to go see that movie in the theater, and then just amazing. I had the anthology, because, you got to have that. And then I had the Lewison recording book. And, that was the gist of my Beatles books. And then I find that podcast, and all of a sudden, they start getting all these authors on, and, discovering more and more books. So, and then this will just, grew from that. But, how has this adventure been for you? I mean, are you still excited about getting all these books and learning, or what?
Absolutely. If anything, doing the Instagram page and interacting with people, it's grown my love for Beatle literature even more than it was at any point in the past.
Right.
I get a message from someone that will say, "Have you read this?" Sometimes people will send me a photo of a book they've seen in some thrift shop or charity shop in the UK, obviously from all over the world. Right. It's, and they'll say, "Have you seen this picture of the Hunter Davies book? Have you seen, can you recommend a really good book about the Hamburg days?"
Mm-hmm.
I love it. I love the fact that people, number one, the fact that people even slightly value my opinion. To it, whether they listen to me, I've no idea. Hey, but they've taken the time to ask.
Right.
And, all over the world on Instagram, as you guys probably know, there's a little app where it tells you where your followers are centered. A large amount are in the US, a large amount are in the UK, but there's like 5 or 6% are in Argentina.
Wow. Yeah. Who would have thought?
And what's really cool is that the historiography of the books becomes its own history.
Mm-hmm.
Aside from the musical content that we all love, following the history of Beatle books and how it's gone on and what's changed, and that's a whole history in itself.
Right. Yeah.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. So now, from all of this love for books, your Instagram page has been pretty successful. now you're you're going to be a competitor of ours. You're going to, take all of our authors away from us now. But no, just kidding. But now you're going to start your own podcast. Let's talk about that.
Yes. So one of the things that have grown out of the page was some of the publishers that got in touch with me about bookstagramming their books, basically promoting and talking about the books and reviewing them. Some of them mentioned about a podcast. I've always been interested in. I love listening to podcasts, obviously, particularly Macca and Beatles podcasts. So I decided to put a few feelers out there with a few authors to say maybe I could just have a very, initially a small show. I get an author on, we chat about a new book, maybe an old book. We talk about where the book came from, what their inspiration was, their Beatle history, and kind of go from there. So yeah, I'm lucky enough to have had a few exclusive interviews with a few cool authors coming up, and that will be launching hopefully kind of mid to late September kind of time.
Awesome, excellent. Did you come up with a name yet for this podcast?
I think I have to just go with Beatles books still. I think that's what it's. Keep it simple, Andy. Yeah.
Right. Keep it authentic to what your original idea was, right?
Exactly that. Yeah.
Great, that's awesome. Congratulations on that. We look forward to checking that out. I mean, there's a lot of great stories. I find the authors that we have had on in the past, they got a story to tell. They want to talk about it. So, they're enthused about it, at least the ones that are, are happy about their work, But yeah, it's a great time. I love talking with authors. I love to hear what they have to say, and, challenging their opinions every once in a while is a lot of fun.
And it's a journey too. You want to find you want to find an author who wrote a book 30 something years ago, and you got to you got to go dig around the internet and find him. And is he willing? And does he want to do it? Some people are, some people aren't.
Right. Speaking of finding, I got a book here that hopefully maybe you can help me out finding this person.
If anybody can, I'm sure Joe can.
Yeah, we'll find out. Cool. Well, excellent. Well, we look forward to that. We'll leave a link on the description area when this show is posted. So stay on the lookout for that. And we'll put on Joe's Instagram page, and we'll just get the word out.
Give it a follow.
Yeah, no, are you going to expand to like Twitter or Facebook page or anything like that?
Yeah, I think Twitter definitely, and Facebook. I think that will be the main focus will still be Instagram. It's about me showing the books that I've got.
Right.
So, but there will definitely be a presence on Facebook and Instagram.
Excellent.
Sorry, Facebook and Twitter. Sorry.
Excellent. Great. Well, we look forward to that. Anyways, let's get to some McCartney books, huh?
Go.
Andy, when did you start, getting into the book collecting?
Probably elementary school. In middle school, I'd go to my school library and just go, okay, what do you got on the Beatles and McCartney? I'm checking them out.
Right.
And that was like, so Joe, you're 36, I'm 39, so we're close in age. So back then it was very limited what they had, So I remember like one of the first books I got it right here. This is Tony Jasper's book on Wings.
Yeah, got that right here too. Yeah.
Came out in the 70s, it was published in 77. So brief history of Wings up until about Wings Over America, which is cool because when that book was published, Wings was still functioning. That's why you go back into those period. It's like it's just encapsulating a time.
Right.
So your basic Beatle books, Lennon books, especially. Learning all about all that. But that was elementary school, middle school, really. Just grabbing anything I could.
Gotcha. Great. So Joe, let's talk about some McCartney books out there. Let's start with favorites. If you got them right there next to you or whatever, let's just pop up a couple books.
Let's see a couple favorites.
And I know you got one particular one that you're pretty vocal about, and I can't wait to talk about that as well.
Okay, well let's start with that. Let's start. Yeah. Let's go there. So here I have a book which everyone listening to this I will hope would own, which is Paul McCartney's Many Years From Now.
This is the only authorized McCartney book out there, right?
I think, along with George's "I'm Me Mine" and the anthology.
Well, I think for McCartney, this is the only
definitely.
Authorized. Yeah.
But it's the only. What I'll say was, apart from those two books, it's the only authorized Beatles books, and the Hunter Davies. Really, there's so few.
Right.
Now, so this did get some, what we would say in the UK, stick when it came out as it came at a time where people thought Paul was feathering his nest a little bit, trying to wrench back his kind of coolness from the fact that John had been seen
as the one,
as the guy, as
Right.
not only as the guy in the Beatles, but the avant-garde guy, the guy that was out exploring London and getting all these crazy sounds and making all this crazy music. When we know now that
Right.
John was stuck in his house with his wife and his son, quite depressed, we
Right.
hear, maybe in the mid-60s, 67 kind of time. And we know who was out there really experiencing all those great things
Right.
and making all this great discoveries, and that was Paul.
Mm-hmm.
So part of me, I understand where that comes from. But here's why, the main reason why I really love Many Years From Now is we had two kind of interviews that John gave, which was the Rolling Stone interview in 1970 and then the Playboy interview in 1980. What those interviews did, unbeknownst to John at the time, both occasions, they kind of framed the Beatles story and they framed the Lennon-McCartney relationship, where particularly in the Rolling Stone interview, as we know, John's dismissive of the Beatles, of Paul, of everything. Yeah, absolutely. But it's a book. It's an interview that was very renowned at the time. It was published by Rolling Stone, which is a very pro
Lennon.
It is a pro Lennon,
Yeah.
a pro Lennon publication. And then when the Playboy interview comes out, which is a more rounded interview and goes into a lot more detail, but he's still selling a story at that point. He's still selling the John and Yoko story. He's still trying to slightly maybe erase Paul from not his past, but certainly from, even though he does say some more positive things about Paul. But then, of course, the worst happens and he's obviously killed. So then all we have from 1980 to 1997, when this book comes out, really is John's side of the story.
Right.
Paul gives interviews. Paul does his own Playboy interview, as we know, in 84, and he starts to wrench back a lot of the credibility that he lost maybe in the, through the 80s, Broad Street, Press to Play, which were not popular at the time. So why I love this book is it starts to really place Paul back where he belongs as the centre of the Beatles, because he goes through in forensic detail with Barry Miles how the songs were written, his relationship with John, his relationship with the other Beatles, what it was like being a Beatle. It's all we have of Paul talking officially and properly, maybe outside of the anthology, about what it was like to write those songs, to create that body of work, and to be a Beatle. And for that, I think we should be grateful. I think we should be grateful that we have this book.
So from that, do you think that kind of spawned from anthology, kind of like Flaming Pie kind of spawned from anthology?
I would think so.
Yeah, I think it was started before anthology.
Yeah.
I think it was certainly written over a number of years. And I think Miles was a great person to use. Miles obviously knew him through the 60s.
Involved, and he was with him every step of the way with all that underground stuff and IT Times and all that.
Right. The Zapple Diaries book is another, I think, a really, really great book that, paints Paul as somebody that, you talk about, he's there in London experimenting, going to those avant-garde, shows and reading those avant-garde books and, dealing with the poets of that time. So, yeah, I mean, we're finally getting, the truth out there that it's, it was really Paul that was the avant-garde one, if you will.
And that's all. That's
completely.
all well and good. And I'm appreciative that we have that. I just wish that if he was going to go on the record and do an official book, it would have encompassed more of the, hey, in 66, 67, I was the one making it happen. I wish it was a little more encompassing of his whole career up until that point, not just such a microcosm of that. That's because that's like, oh, I'm talking about my whole career. Well, I'm just talking about this
Beatles,
this little thing.
You did have Wingspan to come, which obviously he would have known. I assume that Wingspan was coming. Obviously, Wingspan is not a book like this. It's not an authoritative book.
Right.
It's a film, and there is a book that Mark Lewison was involved with, which is mainly a picture book.
Right.
But I think that might have been in his thinking that I've got this project coming up about Wings in 3 or 4 years after this was published.
Right.
Maybe I want to leave off Wings a little bit, but I see what you're saying. He could have written a volume 2 that
Oh,
would
yeah,
have been
there you
Or
about
even
Wings.
talk about the Beatles aspect of his career, you know, because this even many years from now just really focuses on a couple of years within the Beatles' career, really, you know. But
Yeah.
it's an essential book. I would agree with you for sure.
Mm-hmm. Cool. All right, what else you got there that you find?
I'm sure you guys have got this one. This is a great, but actually this kind of ties in with what we're saying about Wings.
Right. Yes.
Tom Doyle.
Yes.
Tom Doyle,
Man
Man on the Run. Tom
E-book.
Doyle.
See, your cover's a little different than the one we got.
Yeah, the UK cover's better.
Yeah, I like that one.
I was talking to our friend Ethan on the Fans on the Run podcast off the record, and we were talking about UK covers and US covers, and sometimes the US covers are great and sometimes the UK covers are great. I have to confess, sometimes I paid on shipping, etc., and I've got a much superior cover.
Hey, listen, I love those George Martin. I love those George Martin covers over there for the Womack 2-part bio.
book, yeah.
Oh yeah.
I think those covers are a lot better than the ones that we ended up with. So,
but then another good example is there's a book by Stephen Stark, which I can't remember. It might be called Meet the Beatles, but it's the US cover is a great shot of them coming off the plane at New York, and the UK cover is just a terrible, like they're not looking at the camera and etc. etc. So anyway,
so Man on the Run. I mean, it's basically you're just looking at from the 70s period from Paul on that one.
So it's an essential, It starts in 1970, it finishes with. I think it covers it does cover a little bit of McCartney too, and the drug bust, etc. But it's written really engagingly. It wasn't a book that it's not a period that there's a lot written about, as we're saying, particularly post kind of 1990 when. And it takes a slightly critical look. It's not a wholesale everything is great about Paul and what Paul did, how Paul treated some of the ex-Wings members, some of the stuff with, particularly with Henry and Denny Sywell and the first incarnation of Wings. So it covers that. There's some good stuff about Jeff Britton in there. You know, you could write a book about Jeff Britton in Wings. I think
yes, you could. As we found out when we spoke to Dan Ely.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, there's a lot there. It covers a lot of that, but at the same time, it celebrates his successes really well. It goes through. It's really positive on Back to the Egg. Back to the Egg is one of my favourite Paul. It's a secret Paul love of mine, so I'm always immediately warm to someone that likes Back to the Egg. And it's it's a period that needed to be covered. I would have loved him to have written about the 80s, because you could have written a really good Paul McCartney 80s book as well. That's, even though that's a bit of a darker time in a lot of ways for Paul than the 70s was, you could definitely get a great book
but
out
in a
there,
way,
and I love this.
Yeah, but in a way, I think that would have been cool for people to do something like that. Just focus, have one book that just focuses on one decade.
I think those are cool too, because you can go so in depth.
Exactly.
On a certain decade, or even an album or a tour.
And he's been productive enough each decade to where you can, fill a decent size.
The 90s are a little dicey because he was so involved with the anthology and Linda. He was doing enough. We know that, but I think the 90s, out of all his decades, might have been the least prolific, just because he was involved with the anthology and Linda was sick and stuff.
So there's just the 2 albums. There's only Off the Ground and there's Flaming Pie.
Well, and then you have the second Fireman album. You have Run Double Run as well, and then you got the 2 classical pieces as well.
He wasn't not sitting around, but in terms of his pop, churning out albums like he did in the 70s and 80s, the 90s just doesn't compare.
Okay, fair enough. But he's busy. He's got the 89-90 tour still going on in the 90s, and he's got the 93 tour.
You could certainly write a book about it. I'm not saying you can't. I just his pop work was not as up to speed, in my opinion.
Gotcha.
The 1990. That's all.
Right.
He wasn't sitting around being a bum for sure.
No, I don't think he was. Anyways, but okay, let's continue. What else you got there, Joe?
Now I've got this one.
Okay.
This is Howard Sounes.
Sounds.
Howard
okay,
Sounes.
let's see again
Andy.
cover Another cover that I
bought
prefer.
mine. I bought mine at Waterstones in Liverpool.
Right.
That's why.
Okay.
Tom, your cover is much better than ours. I think that's a better cover.
You
What
like
do you
this
think,
one
Andy?
better?
I think it's a better cover. Yeah.
I think you might be right on that one. I think that's a better cover than the American one.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, but this. Oh yeah, go ahead. I'm curious on your take on this.
Well, I like this from a slightly voyeuristic way, where it's the only book that's come out that's covered. If we're talking about decades, it goes into quite a lot of detail about Paul in the early noughties to mid noughties. Specifically, it goes into some detail about him and Heather, which is obviously a subject which not some people don't want to talk about at all, which I understand. Yeah. But at the same time, I think it needs to be covered, and it covers that, I think, in quite a fair and balanced way. It's not a book that goes into a lot of detail about the music, but it finds some interesting people that he worked with. It talks to Hugh Padgham. Yeah. Not many people speak to Hugh Padgham about Paul. Obviously, the press to play sessions, as you both know, were fraught at times, which I think is definitely is really interesting. He speaks to Hugh. He speaks to some people that work with him with Lipper. He speaks to him to people that knew Paul in the 90s. You know, people that live near to him in Rye, etc. in the UK. And I think it comes at Paul from a slightly different, I don't want to say tabloidy because it's better than that, but it comes at Paul from a slightly different angle rather than just someone that would write a book where it covers all. Yeah, exactly that. Because I think he wrote some Dylan books. I don't know this how it sounds. Right, okay.
He did. I actually just finished his one on Dylan too. It was a good book. So he's a good writer, Howard Sounds. So for sure. But it's been quite a long time since I've read this one on Paul. So.
Yeah, he's definitely been one that I've been meaning to contact to have on the show. Because I know our friendly rival on Joe's side of the pond had him on. So he's definitely one that I look to
okay, good.
To have on eventually. Absolutely.
And I think this was published about 2010 or 11.
Yeah. Around then, yeah, definitely around then. I didn't know he was a UK writer. I don't know why, but I just assumed because he's a Dylan guy that he was in the US. But I only found out today that he's a Londoner, I think.
Yeah, 2010.
2010.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, let's move on.
Okay, one kind of a slightly jokey, mildly jokey one, which is, I don't know if you guys know this one. It's this book here. It's called McCartney Songwriter by somebody called Howard Elson.
Okay.
Do you guys know this book? Do you know this author?
I know. I know the book. I've been looking at it to purchase, but I haven't gotten it yet. So
it's an interesting. Well, here's a little example of something.
Put it back up for a second, if you don't mind. There you go. Okay.
Songwriter. Okay.
Good cover. Good cover picture. Good 80s cover picture.
An 80s publication.
It's 86. 86. It cost me a whole 50 pence in the UK.
Wow.
I can't remember where. I think it might have been in a book sale. It's an ex-library book. Now, I just saw it, and just being me, I thought I've got to have that for 50p. I will take that off of your hands. So it's great. It's great in the sense it finishes at Broad Street. It's published before Press to Play. I imagine it came out around the time that Press to Play was released to kind of cash in maybe on a little bit. But the thing that really makes me laugh is obviously, as you can see, it's a fair thickness.
Right.
It goes into fair detail, and then the person that they decide to finish the book with, they take a quote from someone. Now, you would imagine that this would be someone that had a large impact on Paul's life, somebody that Paul knew intimately, somebody that really understood Paul. So he decides to end the book with a quote from Francis Rossi of Status Quo.
Wow.
Interesting.
In which he ends the book by Francis Rossi's quote is, Paul McCartney will go down in musical history.
That's
it, right?
Which you can't argue with that as a statement. But I'm not sure why Francis had to be part of that, but hey.
Well, 50p would you expect?
The author must have been a Status Quo fan then, I guess, probably.
Who wrote that book, Joe?
Somebody called Howard Elson.
Okay.
Is that a name you guys know?
I don't know. Track him down.
Yeah.
I'll try.
I know you will.
So that's my kind of Fab Four that I brought along to chat about today.
Great. Yeah, I mean, there's also there. I mean, there. Okay, so I'll bring up one here that I have that we found out. Was it earlier this year? I think. So just every once in a while, I'll just scroll Amazon. I'll type in McCartney, and then in books will come up. I click that and just go. And then so this one I've discovered that I had no clue about. It's called McCartney Solo.
Oh, that one, yeah.
See you next time. So, and apparently the author is from over there, is English. Mark Bowen. He did put a email address in here. I did email him, no response, and it said that the email was taken down or something like that.
Kicked it back.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, this is somebody that another opinionated piece, kind of like Ted Montgomery's book is.
Yeah.
So definitely would like to. So I don't know if you've heard about this one or not, but I definitely would like to.
I think you messaged me about that, or I think I saw that on one of your socials, Tom.
We discussed it, I think. Yeah.
And it's not a book I have, so I can't comment on the content. I'll be interested. It's on Amazon UK. It's quite easy. It's not difficult to get hold of.
No.
Is it good? Is it enjoyable?
It's I'll go back and I'll just read some of his his thoughts on each song, because it goes song by song as well.
Like Ted's.
Yeah, like Ted's. And he'll just put in the basic, information and just his thoughts on it. And, for the most part, I tend to agree with what he has to say. I mean, he is a fan, obviously. I mean, unless he wouldn't have, done something like this. But I thought it's pretty good. It's not
What
bad.
was that published again, Tom?
I think this was 2010.
Another 2010 book.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
2009 actually. So.
Yeah, but we didn't. We tried to contact him, but to no avail. So.
Yeah. I mean, the cover is a little, not really much to be desired, but it's something though. I mean, and with these opinionated pieces coming out more and more, I tend to like to read them.
Is it just solo, or is it Beatles?
Yeah, it's just solo.
Just solo, which is why, in our opinion, it's like for us, it's like anybody who's going to write a dedicated book just on the solo person. Where are you? We'll talk to you. Because it's been such a slow process that's now gaining some traction, which is nice. This has been a fun one of mine to look at.
Yeah,
a long time ago. Early 2000s. This one, Gary McGee, pretty basic, but a good book.
I was going to say, how does that? Because I looked at that at the time, and how does that compare to the Tom Doyle book? Is it similar or?
Similar. Tom's is much more thorough, though.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
But this is a good one. It's a good. It covers mostly the early stuff. I mean, it goes up until the end a little bit, but this is pretty much heavy on the early incarnations and wings, and obviously the big lineup with all the success they had. But I think this was 2003. This one. This was an early one too.
Yeah. So before Andy came on the show with my old co-host, we were lucky enough to have Paul DeNoyer on the show to talk about this one, Conversations with McCartney, which, I believe he started interviewing Paul, earlier this decade. And then he just goes back and just talks about different, areas of Paul's solo career. I mean, he does talk about it does read as a biography, because a lot of his interviews are it's not chronological. It just like I said, it reads like a biography, so it's kind of in order. So it's a pretty good read. I did enjoy his interviews with McCartney, so I thought this was a well-worthy book to get.
When I posted that on my feed, the guy that took that picture on the front cover got in touch and just said,
"Oh, nice.
I love that." And then he told me a little story about how the photo shoot was a Friday and then a Monday. So we did some pictures on the Friday, and then they were going to meet again on the Monday to do some more pictures. I think they ran out of time, and he said he was saying he was nervous the whole weekend thinking about taking Paul McCartney's photograph.
I do like the pic that they picked. So I do think.
What year was that published, Tom?
This was again,
about 2013, 14.
Yeah. Again, this previous decade. So you're looking at 2015. So,
yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Another essential that I've got this book open almost every other day, and it's the Luca Perazzi book. It's Good. Again, he throws in. I kind of if you're gonna be a book on facts, then be that. And then, but every once in a while, he'll throw in his own personal opinion on the track, you know, which sometimes it kind of irritates me, you know, a little bit. But nonetheless, it's good for dates. It's good for who's on the track. I mean, there are some question marks here and there. But anyways, this is I think an essential. You know, we were lucky to have
great
Luca
book.
on as
I'm
well.
not a fan of the cover. Luca, I love it.
Yeah.
I love the book, but the cover just. Some of these covers in some of these books make my head scratching, especially the newer ones.
One thing from doing this project is the covers really. So for instance, if I put a book up on the feed that's got a really kind of striking cover, it seems to get more traction, even if it's not a particularly well-known book.
Right.
People will see the cover and go, "That's a great cover."
Right.
You know, I'll look into that one.
Yeah. Another series. It's a group of 4. I had reached out to the author to see if he was going to do a volume 5. He said he started working on it, but he just thought it was just ended up being a little boring at the time. And that's John Blaney, who's series,
I have those too.
Yeah, the songs we were singing, but this is the group of 4. I mean, it's a 4-parter. So you got the 70s all the way up to the noughties.
You have that, but that's that edition. I have one book that has all of them in one.
Yeah, you got the one where he's got the image with Lennon, you know, side by side, right?
No, I have it there. So there's two. There's a Lennon and McCartney book together,
right?
And there's a Lennon book by himself and a McCartney book by himself.
Okay.
The McCartney book I have is just all of the McCartney stuff condensed into the one.
Okay.
So, but yours has like the images and stuff.
Right, exactly. And that's why I like this book, is because it'll give you the images of.
Yeah, see, I didn't get any of that.
Yeah, so that's why I really appreciate this book. You know, so you're getting the images.
But Blaney's a great writer and a good author. Yeah,
we were able to talk to him as well, so he is a good interview.
His John book, I think it's called Listen to This Book. Is excellent. Right. I think it's out of print. It's hard to get hold of now. It's not easy to get hold of.
Gotcha.
But it's definitely worth a read.
Yeah,
for sure.
A book that I was halfway through because we were supposed to interview the author and he kind of backed out at the last minute. That's the A Life by Peter Ames Carlin.
Yeah,
was kind of enjoying this one.
I'm not broken up about that one because I'm not a fan of this one.
Okay.
It's a little bit light, that one, for me. I've seen him on a couple of documentaries talking about Paul, and he comes across better in the documentaries than the content of that book. I thought the content of that book is, and also I remember the thing I drew from that book is he's really mean about Magneto and Titanium Man.
Oh no!
Which is one of my favorite silly Paul songs.
Same here, buddy.
Yeah. His book on Brian Wilson is excellent, but I thought. Yeah, his book on Brian Wilson I thought was very good. I just thought his book on Paul was just a little bit on the light side.
Yeah. See, he comes across very articulate when I see interviews of him on YouTube and whatnot.
Yeah.
You know, so I thought he would be, hopefully maybe in the future we'll revisit that.
In terms of the newest, this has got to be the newest one, though, right? The Philip Norman. This has got to be the newest one.
Of bios, right?
Of bios,
I would believe. Yeah,
I've got a different cover for that as well. So I was quite lucky. He did a book launch when that came out in Waterstones in Piccadilly in London.
Is that 15? Well,
maybe 15, might be 14. 16. Wow.
Yeah.
I'm losing track of my years. So So I went to this book launch, quite sparsely attended, only about 10 or 15 of us there. Couple of real people that I recognised from the kind of London Beatles scene, and he spoke about the book, and he spoke a little bit about obviously he's famous for not being a big Paul fan.
No.
He spoke a little bit about that, and my main memory of that evening was he started to talk about John right at the end of the kind of Q&A at the end of the book chat, and then for some reason there was a power cut in the bookshop and all the lights went out.
Oh no.
I was a bit spooked, but yeah, it's quite an interesting book. I think it claws back a little bit of the bad feeling that he had.
Right.
Yeah, he's trying to right some wrongs there. Good old Norma.
Yeah.
Norma Phillips. Yeah.
So I got halfway through the Celovich book. Obviously we got to talk to him. excuse me, this has been enjoyable. I will finish this. The one I haven't gotten into yet is the Chet Filippo book.
The unauthorized, about
yeah,
91,
yeah.
I think that one came out in early 90s.
I don't have that one. That I should have it really. It looks quite light. Is it? It looks like quite a lightweight.
It is a light. Well, that's a classic American. It's in every American library.
Yeah, 88. So
88. Oh,
okay, yeah.
This
was the interesting one I had sent you. You hadn't seen this one before, Joe, right?
Yeah.
No. Well, I'd seen since we discussed it. I have done a small slice of research, and I think it was quite well. Is it 76, 74? When was it?
Is it that early?
I think maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. It looks.
Take a look.
I could be wrong.
75.
There you go.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, these little Vanity Fair 70s paperbacks, I love them because you can't tell. They're so cheap made, you know?
Yeah.
The other one that you showed too, you got the two that you showed, right?
Oh, this one.
Yeah, so I ordered both of those, and I should have had them already. I was hoping to show them for the show. No, I'm not. It's not.
Yeah, this one was published in '78. It has so much coverage on London Town. That's why I brought it up, because there's so much press and attention given to London Town, because that's when it came out, Martin Grove. Yeah.
Yeah, another one that went under the radar for me is this one by John Cherry.
What's that like?
Another opinionated, piece. It's just, goes throughout his solo career again. And, I haven't dug through it a lot. I mean, it's another lightweight book. I mean, it's not that it's going to be a quick read. I just read the first few pages, and, again, it's just, it's just fun to have, really.
Another quite shabby cover.
Yeah, exactly.
No, when do you write your Macca book?
Yeah.
One day.
Yeah.
Good.
So it's called Paul McCartney's Solo Music Career, 1970-2010. Life, Love, and the Sense of Childlike Wonder. An in-depth examination of the Beatles. An in-depth examination of the best and worst songs from the world's most successful singer-songwriter. So there you go. But yeah, this one definitely went under the radar for me. Again, another one I think I found on Amazon.
Expensive or not really?
No, I think this was like 15.
Okay.
Yeah, not too crazy. Again, a couple, another ones. Truant Boy, which I haven't gotten to yet. Looking forward to getting to this one. I think this one came out 4 or 5 years ago as well. I don't know if you've seen this one yet, Joe, or not.
I haven't. No, what's that?
Yeah.
That looks cool.
It's art, authenticity, and Paul McCartney. So again, one that I haven't dug into yet, but
cool.
Try to get to. His name is Martin Show, is the author's name. So,
what else is there, Joe? Any other favorites?
Well, I was gonna say, picture book wise, obviously there's not as many picture books that Paul has got that is as compared to John, but this one.
Oh, of course.
Oh, yes.
Hypnosis.
The Water, which I think is a really lovely book. I mean, as we were saying earlier, of the time, it's just got some fantastic pictures from that tour, which you don't get anywhere else. It's got a lovely bit where you see the families of the guys in Wings, just some kind of family pictures with Denny. Obviously, we all know the Paul family pictures, but it's good to see a bit more depth on the guys that were obviously the most successful incarnation of Wings. And I think, I can't think of many other really great books that are just photo books that are about Paul.
Yeah, Linda's pictures, obviously.
Well, you've got the latest two. I mean,
I'm talking about the very, very first one, not the
first one. Okay, like
very, 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 very first one. From the
That's
70s.
great.
Yeah.
But a lot of good photos in the. I'm sorry, a lot of great ones in the Polaroid diaries too that just came out as well. So, one I keep forgetting that I have is this one. I gotta that's the one.
Great.
This is a good one.
Yeah, the one I keep forgetting that I have, because it's kind of like buried into two bigger books, is and I guess there's a couple parts to this too. Is Paul McCartney in the News. This one's 69 to 73.
Who wrote that? That's an edited thing, right? That's an edited thing. Who would put that together?
All it is news articles. And the name is C. Barrett is the name.
Okay.
I should have that. I love contemporary articles and stuff. So if it's all that, I should really have that.
Yeah, but I think, like I said, I think there was 2 or 3 volumes to this. This first volume is 69 to 73. So interesting as well. One book I wish I had one before we did our Broad Street episode was this boy right here. You know, so
Oh, that's a great one too. Got
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Period piece stuff.
Yeah, and then we got the Chris Welch book as well. Again, called the Definitive Biography.
I'm gonna grab a book. One sec.
Yeah, yeah. So a lot of stuff out there, really.
So much stuff out there, and actually, you don't realise how many kind of 90s, 80s, 90s biographies. It seems to be like we said, the Chet Flippo, you know, the Salvage one, that one, the Chris Welsh, and there was quite a selection of Paul biographies rather in the 80s into the 90s, which may be another reason why many years from now comes out. I imagine he wasn't happy with you know, a lot of those books that we've discussed. Maybe apart from Chris's, were quite light. You know, a lot of those books are quite light. So many years from now is another way of him saying, okay, it's not a whole biography, as we said, but it's got a lot of depth and a lot of information.
Plus, I respect the fact that the Chris Celovich one was more a pro-Paul a biography, which
and he didn't hide behind that fact either.
No, exactly. He talked about that. So, and there's not a lot of those out there. So, but what do you got, Andy?
So one of the things we've all talked about all these books, and there's so many to keep track of, and Joe's like there's 400, and it's endless, right? So when my time spent in Liverpool, my tutor, Dr. Mike Brocken, was working on a book at the same time, which came out in 2012, and it's a book that talks about all the Beatle books that are out there and how to get them, and reviews them all in a book called The Beatles Bibliography. And this was written by my tutor in Liverpool, Dr. Mike Brocken, and a student in the cohort of not the class I was in, the one before me, Melissa Davis. And it's about, 600 pages. And it just talks about all the books, where they were published, a short review on them. Some are longer, but if you know, it's worth picking up to just have a book that talks about the books to figure out, you know, are they good, are they not? You know, there's been a couple revisions since this was published. So, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I gotta get that.
This is definitely worth picking up because you can go through it and it'll tell you, okay, and it's all alphabetical by last author. So you by the last name of the author. So it'll tell you, okay, this is a famous book. This is not so good, not worth reading. But because there's been an explosion of books, say over the past 20 or 30 years, he came up with the idea to write this and put it together. And it's
great companion, especially if you're a fan of the books, you know.
For sure.
I would recommend, similar to that, I don't know if you guys know a book by a woman called Erin Torkelson Weber. So she's a professor. I should know the university, and I apologise where she's. But she's not really a Beatle nut as such. But she wrote a book about 4, maybe 5 years ago, and it a little bit like we were just saying. It kind of covers how the perception of the Beatles changes, and Paul and John in particular, from 1970 to 2015 through the books that are published. So she looks at things from a historical viewpoint. So things like how reliable are certain sources. Is Bill Harry a reliable source that goes on everything?
Right.
Whereas is a guy that Lewison finds a reliable source that was tucked away somewhere that had never spoken to anyone before. And about how post John's death, books like Ray Coleman's book, Ray Connolly's book, the Goldman book, how they frame the perception of John, obviously, and the Beatles, and books that have come out. So, for instance, books like the Patty Boyd book, you know, how that framed Jeff Emmerich's book is a great example where you've got, talking about the books earlier, the way you've got someone's perspective. There's a beautiful example of a guy that's got clearly an issue with George, or had an issue with George, which, you know, we're not sure why really, but that's fed into that book quite wholeheartedly.
I don't think he was a fan of Emmerich being a part of the anthology either. I think I kindly remember him saying like some smart ass comment about, you know, Emmerich being a part of that as well. So yeah,
he was such a Paul camp guy, you know.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Well, I
But
think that's
just like Jeff Lynne was in the George camp.
Well, he had to even it out. I mean, if you're going to have Lynn produce, then you got to have Emmerich
Well,
as your
that's
engineer.
probably the deal, you know.
and you've got, and even Mark Lewison. I don't think, obviously, George and Mark Lewison. I think there's Mark spoken. I'm sure you guys have heard on a few other podcasts about him
Yeah.
and George having a good
fallout.
and then not so good relationship.
Right.
Yeah.
Actually, during the fest for Beatle fans that happened last month, I was listening to Lewison's show, and I got to talk to him about his time working with Club Sandwich. And he had briefly mentioned that where, since he was going to go over to the Paul camp, he kind of lost this little, friendship that he had just, starting to blossom with
George
George.
thought he played some bootleg out and released it to somebody, which is totally not true.
Yeah, definitely.
So, yeah, that's, I mean, the stuff that all the behind the scenes, all the behind the scenes stuff that you learn as this stuff, whether or not they're true or not, I mean, is another story, but they're kind of fun. And then, you get the musical side of Paul, which there's not a lot of books of, but then you get the stuff from Adrian Allen that he's been putting out that's more of a chord, the structure and song structure and chords and stuff like that. So, those are out there as well.
Those are worthy additions to this because it's music. It's actually tackling the music from a musician's point of view, discussing it really in print for the first time. I mean, Adrian's done the whole, the whole thing of Paul's music, and that's
I mean, he's definitely gone throughout his whole career. I mean, 70 up all the way up until the
those are nice.
It's
just a different kind of a book that enters the canon now. It's not just a biography or a photo book. It's somebody actually talking about the song structures. Benitez's book, From the Words and Music of Paul McCartney from 2010, same thing. Right. So, there's authors actually going into his music and, talking about the notation, like a McDonald, like an Ian McDonald book, really.
So what's out there that you've read that you haven't really cared for, McCartney?
Well, I think we discussed the Peter Ames Carlin one. I think for that it was more of a letdown. I thought, like we said, I had high hopes for it, and I think it was a little bit of a letdown. So that was one that I was looking forward to reading when I got it, and it didn't grab me. It didn't kind of go anywhere. I can't think of many others that I've been really disappointed about. Obviously, there are Beatle books that paint Paul in a bad light, which we know of some good examples of that. But I can't think of many really where someone's written a book about Paul where I've been really kind of disappointed with.
Gotcha.
You know what? Because the volume, because there just isn't an amount of quantity. Okay, Beatle books are like this, Lennon books are like this, and McCartney books are about a third of that. So there hasn't been so many published that you can say, oh, toss that one out. It's there just hasn't. There's been so much written about Lennon. There's been so much written about the Beatles and McCartney. But it's nice to see that it's changing. But to your point, I would agree with you. There's not nearly one that says it's just crap. Toss it, because there just isn't anyone. There's some that you like better than others, but there's not one where you could say just because there's not as many.
Right. Then you got the books out there too that deal with kind of like Eight Arms to Hold You, where it talks about all the solo, as a group. So you have to get that to see what they have to say about Paul's, which I would imagine, since Chip was kind of a beginning author on that McCartney Legacy series, I'm sure that some of the style of his writing may end up in the finished McCartney Legacy book. So I'm kind of curious to see how that turns out.
We have a date on that McCartney Legacy publication date, or just no? We don't know yet.
I think October 21.
So like a year from now.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't think they have an official release date, but it will be in.
Because they're dead, but their deadline's approaching.
Their deadline is in October, his deadline is in October. So. Like the Doggett book, You Never Give Me Your Money, has a lot of great solo Paul information in there, dealing with a lot of the court cases. The Beatles and Drugs, deals with a lot of, Paul's, issues, stuff like that, and it's fascinating. You get Womack's George Martin bio that deals with some solo stuff too. So, obviously there's Beatles books out there that'll deal with, some of the solo years as well. So you just gotta, find that stuff. But yeah, I mean, a lot of good stuff out there that, unfortunately you just gotta find, because it's been 20, 30 years since they've,
I mean,
been published.
Those two books that you showed, the Mark Bowen book and the other book, I can't remember the author's name that you showed. You know, they were books that I was unaware of unless I really dug deep to, like you said,
Right.
had a deep dig in Amazon's crates. So I think, I think there's ample opportunity out there for more to come out.
Yeah.
Let's hope. But yeah, I think some of those ones that you just mentioned probably should be better known than they are. Whereas maybe some of the kind of averagey John books, and certainly some of the averagey Beatle books, are better known and have sold more than some really good Paul books.
Right. Yeah. We've dealt with that a few times with some authors who, they want to write like a McCartney book, but it's an easier sell to write a Beatles book than it is just a regular.
Yeah, but hopefully that sounds like that landscape is changing now, which is
I
good.
would hope so.
Definitely.
I would hope so. Yeah.
We haven't mentioned the Ian Peel book, The Unknown Paul McCartney,
yes,
which is a
yes,
great book.
you.
Obviously, you guys had him on.
Of course.
That, like I said, I think the way forward is finding a niche almost in a Beatle or the Beatles' career and going there and looking deep.
Running with it.
Right.
Yeah.
Again, 2002. So when you have somebody on that, the book is, almost 20 years old now. It's just like, where do you go with the interview? How much is that person going to remember? But yeah, I mean, he had some fun things to talk about that in an interview. So I was appreciative of him coming on and talking about it. But yeah, one other book too that we were able to have the author on. His name was Dennis Alstrand, and this is the Beatles' revolutionary bass player, which, again, a kind of opinionated piece. I mean, this is his opinion on Paul as a bass player with the Beatles and from his solo career as well. So interesting. I do want to mention, unfortunately, it's a little bit of a sad note. We had an author on. His name was Tony Connolly back in December of 2017, and he was working on a book called Paul McCartney in the Beatles. And unfortunately, he has been fighting a battle with cancer over the last 2 years. So I think that project might be in limbo now. But if you're interested, anybody listening, you can go back and listen to that interview. That was a lot of fun as well. So, but yeah, I mean, I'm really happy that this past, decade, there's just been more and more stuff coming out. So, hopefully that trend continues.
Me too. I'm happy as well.
Yeah. I think the appearance alongside of the archive collection of McCartney albums lends itself to that, because those archives that come out with the books are, the books themselves, and those are, that lend itself to this narrative of the last 10 years, which is nice because they've been so thorough, high in photograph content, but reappraising the albums and the books and all those sets have gone a long way, I think, to this pro McCartney appearance of books, especially over the last decade.
Altogether, I mean, are you pretty much happy with the output of McCartney books that are out there?
I think, yeah, definitely. I think there's, like, as we say, there's a large amount of room where there's niches that can pop up about Paul's stuff. You could write a great book about the 76 tour, the drug bust, maybe what it was like to be in Wings. I know Lawrence Juber's done books, but they've been mainly photo books, etc. I think there's loads of areas that you could go into with Paul, or people that have interacted with Paul. Absolutely. So I think it's exciting. I think it's exciting still. And the one person that we haven't heard much from is Mike McCartney. His books have been mainly photo books. They've mainly covered pre-Beatle years. So I think, and he's someone that was there through Paul's whole life. He was there for a lot of the big Beatle moments. He was in Wales, obviously, for the Maharishi bit when they found out about Brian. He's got a unique insight. So I think Mike is someone that maybe one day I can see. Andy's got a great book of his there, which I have as well. But I think I'm talking about from like a biographical way, and maybe that would be something that would be cool to hear.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, he does talk a little bit. I mean, during that big McGear campaign that he had last year, from the reissue of that. There's excuse me, if you buy the deluxe CD set, there's a DVD that comes with a couple interviews that gets into detail about working with his brother, a little bit. But yeah, I think that would be a great idea as well. Get some stuff from him. Actually, there's a really cool bit where he's on a talk show, and there's a person on there starting the the Beatles is with the McCartney was dead whole rumor.
Oh God, that was
and
so good.
And he's in the audience, and he's just shaking his head and just telling the guy he's rubbish pretty much.
No, do you know what that is? That's the beginning of the YouTube documentary by Reckless 345, which is the beginning of the whole documentary. Which is, I had never seen that clip before. Have you seen that, Joe?
Yeah, I saw it in that documentary, and it looks vaguely familiar. But yeah, it's an interesting one. Mike's certainly someone that I think we should hear more of.
Yeah, but he's very careful not to overstep, and his
there's
brother.
A lot of people that are pretty careful. Like, it would be pretty cool to hear from Jane Asher a little bit too.
No, you'll never hear from Jane Asher.
What about Mark? Do you think Mark Lewis will get to her?
No. No, it's been 50 years and she hasn't said anything. Yeah. There's anything Mark can do to get her to talk.
If she's going to go to someone, it's going to be Mark. But
I would hope so. I mean, because her appearance pretty much will show up in Volume 2, then of his Tune In series.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah, when it comes out in 2030.
Yeah. Yes, when it's ready. Hopefully, I'll be retired so I can just sit back and read it.
Give you a whole day to Mark Lewison. Yeah.
Exactly.
Many days, probably.
Yeah. But anyways, this has been great. Thank you, Joe, for joining us for this episode.
Thank you for having me.
Let's talk about this. Let's plug that Instagram again. Let's remind us where you can find that.
Instagram, it's just @BooksBeatles. It's just a page where I primarily archive all the books I have. I do reviews of forthcoming and existing books. We chat about existing Beatle books and old Beatle books and new Beatle books. And yeah, a guaranteed fun time is guaranteed for all.
Beautiful.
Fantastic.
And then you're gonna expand to Twitter and Facebook eventually.
Twitter, Facebook coming up, yeah. And like I said, hopefully we'll get the pod going.
And the podcast going too.
It's going to be an empire. I'm going to be bigger than NPL, maybe.
Good luck with that, my friend. Good luck with that. Well, it was great having you on. So we really appreciate it, and we'll get this episode out in a couple weeks, and we'll hopefully more people discover your site.
Your page, your account, and your podcast soon to be, which Two Legs guys will be subscribed right away.
Man, you guys have been really helpful. I've had a blast today, and it's great to speak to you. I know a lot of the people that follow me. We talk about podcasts, and you guys always come up as a gold standard. So it's really nice.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Yeah. So anyways, so as Andy has said earlier during the show, we're now on Spotify. We're now on Pandora, right? We're also on Amazon, as well as our usual Podbean, iHeartRadio, iTunes, wherever there's podcasts. You can check us out there, and you can also watch the video version, which hopefully you'll check that out as well on our YouTube channel. Two Legs, a Paul McCartney podcast, where you're going to see all of our beautiful faces and all the wonderful books that we talked about today. So check us out there as well. You can there you go. You can email us at twolegspodcast@gmail.com. So thank you everybody for your comments. It's really much appreciated, and we'll see you again next week for our Off the Ground show. It's going to be another fun, controversial episode.
Oh, it won't be fun for you. It'll be fun for me.
Oh no, it'll be really fun. It'll be fun to see all the comments of people that agree with me.
Get out of my way.
Anyways, everybody take care. Great seeing you all, and as always, everybody out there, have a great day and a beautiful night. See you.
Listening to Two Legs, a Paul McCartney podcast. Podcast, hosted by Tom Hunyadi and Andy Nichols, with musical contributions by Dylan